Time to take a look at what's been grabbing headlines around the world now, and Florence joins me on set.
Thomas.
You're starting with that bombing in Ankara on Wednesday.
That's right. Now, the Turkish authorities have been blaming Kurdish groups in Syria and in Turkey. Let's take a look at the front page of the Hurriyet Daily News. That's the English language version of Hurriyet. You can see this is the Prime Minister, Ahmet Davutoglu. He says that the Syrian Kurdish group YPG was actually used as a pawn by the Syrian regime and is the perpetrator of that car bomb attack in Ankara on Wednesday, which killed 28 people. So you can see that's the big front page news in Turkey. The Daily Sabah, which is another Turkish paper, seen as being quite a pro-government paper, you can see their take on things. Enough is enough. Wednesday's attack should be a tipping point in Turkey's Syria policy, rather. You can see they're calling for a ground operation now. Very strong words in this piece in the Daily Sabah. It says Turkey essentially should put troops on the ground in Syria with or without the support of the international coalition.
Well, the idea of Turkish troops on the ground is obviously a cause of concern in the region.
That's right. The editorial in The Guardian is very alarmed by the situation in Syria and along the border with Turkey. If Turkish groups go into Syria to block Kurds, Russians might react militarily, and that could, of course, spiral dangerously out of control. You can see they're very critical of the government's obsession with Kurds. All this is adding to the region's troubles, according to The Guardian. Turkey's domestic politics are becoming a major international problem, according to The Guardian, and all this is threatening to essentially make the conflict and make the region all the more explosive.
Moving on to some other news now. Is it Brexit or Remain? Those crunch talks in Brussels on the UK's membership to the EU, obviously causing lots of concern in the papers.
Actually, and as you can imagine, in the British papers.
Yes, I can.
Of course.
Undoubtedly.
Let's take a look at the front page of The Guardian here. You can see David Cameron has one chance to strike an EU deal here. It's a make or break moment for the EU, but also for David Cameron, according to The Guardian. It's the biggest gamble of his premiership. Now, there's a good cartoon in The Independent as well, where you can see David Cameron depicted as a wrench here, trying to tweak and tighten the nuts and bolts of...
I've seen him looking better.
Yeah, I've seen him looking better as well. You do recognize him, though, in that wrench. Now, essentially, Cameron is trying to put Britain's place in Europe on a permanent new footing, but he's drawing criticism from across the political spectrum. Let's take a look at the front page of the Daily Mail, which is usually a big fan of David Cameron's, but very critical of his EU policy. The face that says it all. Very sad.
Great photo.
Great photo. I doubt David Cameron really liked that photo, though. According to the Daily Mail, essentially the Prime Minister's deal has been watered down by Euro deputies. In fact, the Euro MPs are threatening to kill his deal altogether. Essentially, the Euro MPs are having their way with David Cameron.
And next, the US President Barack Obama has announced he'll be making a landmark trip to Cuba.
That's right. On March 21st and 22nd, it's going to be historic. The last time a US president went to Cuba was...
It's not a holiday.
That's right. It's not a holiday. Maybe he'll do a little beach time there. 88 years ago was the last time that a US president went to Cuba. This is Granma, which is the official Cuban paper. You can see here, this is a photo of Josefina Vidal. She's the director of U.S. affairs for the Cuban Foreign Ministry, and she says here that the U.S. president will be treated with the utmost respect and consideration.
The announcement's being met, though, with mixed reaction in the US.
That's right. Let's take a look at an article in the Washington Post, which sums things up quite well. It says that the White House, is seeing this Cuban visit as a chance to consolidate gains, but critics, and particularly Republicans, are seeing this as caving in, essentially a validation of Cuba's repressive regime. And what you need to know is that the Washington Post has been very critical of warming ties between the U.S. and Cuba, and it says that ever since Obama announced those warming ties, Cuba hasn't really done anything to improve democracy or to put down its authoritarian rule. It's all about wreaking the economic benefits, and that is just going to continue happening after this visit from the U.S. president. The New York Times is a little bit more hopeful, though. Let's take a look at their editorial. They talk about an American president in Cuba with this great photo of a Cuban looking towards the U.S. Now, what you need to know is Obama is actually very popular in Cuba, and so the New York Times says this is actually a good opportunity. If Obama can speak to Cubans and encourage them to go more towards democracy, well, they will listen to his message.
And it's the day we never thought we'd see happen. Pope Francis has a go at Donald Trump.
That's right, the epic showdown. Let's take a look at this article in the Daily Beast. Did Pope Francis just sink Donald Trump? I mean, can you imagine the Pope saying that Donald Trump is unchristian because he wants to build this wall between Mexico and the United States? Ouch. But, of course, Donald Trump was quick to fight back. You can read more about it in the New York Times. He called the Pope disgraceful, unbelievable, and said that the Mexican government essentially had hoodwinked him into criticizing him. But a very interesting piece in the New York Times that says that, okay, it might be risque for Trump to criticize the Pope, but it actually might help him win votes in the South where evangelicals think the Pope is too liberal. So it might play into his hands after all.
Okay, all to wait and see. Thanks very much, Florence, for that look at the international press.